You know that feeling, right? You're taking a survey and you just stop and think, what are they actually asking me here? Or even worse, maybe you've designed one and had that sinking feeling, are my questions completely missing the mark? It's simple. In any study, the quality of your answers depends entirely on the quality of your questions. If you get the questions wrong, everything that follows is built on a shaky foundation. So today, we're going to fix that.
So how do we build that solid foundation? Here's our game plan for today. First, we'll break down what content validity even means. Then, we'll walk through a clear blueprint for getting it right. We'll get into how to gather feedback from experts, turn it into a score using something called the CVI, and finally, figure out what that score actually tells us.
All right, let's start at the beginning with the absolute bedrock of any credible research, content validity.
I know. Content validity sounds super academic, but the idea is actually pretty simple. Think of it as a sanity check. It's just asking, do your questions, your instructions, all the little pieces of your survey, do they actually measure the one specific thing you're trying to study? Are they relevant, and do they cover all the important bases?
And you really can't overstate how important this is. The stakes are incredibly high. I mean, you could have perfect stats, a huge sample size, but if your questions are off base, if that content validity is weak, your conclusions are just built on sand. It is the first and honestly the most important hurdle you have to clear.
Okay, so we get why it's so critical. But how do we actually do it? Well, lucky for us, there's a clear, systematic process, a blueprint really, for building a rock-solid questionnaire. And here they are. These 6 steps are going to take us from just a rough draft of questions to a fully validated instrument. We'll prep our forms, pick our experts, run the validation, have them review and score everything, and then finally, we'll calculate the Content Validity Index, or CVI. Let's walk through this together.
Now, this whole thing isn't just about crunching numbers. It's about people. The real strength of this process comes from tapping into the focused knowledge of experts. This human element is really where it all begins.
So if you want good data from your experts, you've got to give them crystal clear instructions. Their task is pretty straightforward. Rate each question on a 4-point scale of relevance, from not relevant all the way to highly relevant. This just makes sure everyone's on the exact same page from the get-go.
And here's what that looks like in practice. The form itself gives a really clear definition of what's being measured, that's the domain, and then it just lists out the specific questions or items for the experts to rate. It takes an abstract idea and turns it into a simple checklist.
So a big question is, how many experts do you really need? Check out the relationship here. The fewer experts you have, the higher the bar is for agreement. If you have 5 or fewer, you literally need perfect, 100% consensus. That's tough. And it's exactly why the source recommends a sweet spot of about 6 to 10 experts. It gives you a really robust check without demanding absolute perfection.
Okay, the experts have done their job, we've got their ratings, now for the fun part. The magic, really, turning all that subjective feedback into a single objective score you can defend. It's time to calculate the CVI.
Now, this table might look a little intimidating at first glance, but I promise it's pretty simple. The first thing we do is convert the experts' 4-point ratings into a simple binary score. Any item they rated a 3 or a 4, meaning quite or highly relevant, gets a 1. Anything rated a 1 or 2 gets a 0. We're just boiling it down to a simple yes-no question. Did the expert think this item was relevant?
So, our first calculation starts small, at the item level. Before we can judge the whole survey, we need to see how each individual question holds up. This is the item-level CVI, or ICVI. It tells us the exact proportion of experts who thought a single question was relevant.
Let's make this real. We'll use question 2 from our table as an example. If you look back at that data, you'll see that 9 out of the 10 experts rated it as relevant. They gave it a 1. The math from here is super simple. 9 divided by 10. That gives us an ICVI of 0.9 for that one specific question. Then you do that for every single item on your list.
Okay, once we have a score for every single question, we need to zoom out and get a validity score for the whole questionnaire. This is what we call the scale level CVI, or SCVI.
Now, there are 2 common ways to figure out this overall score. The first one, SCVI/AV, is just what it sounds like, the average of all those individual item scores we just calculated. The second, SCVI/UA, stands for Universal Agreement. It's much stricter. It only counts the items that every single expert agreed was relevant.
So using the data from our table, let's calculate the average method first.
If we add up all the individual ICVI scores and divide that by the total number of items, which is 12 in this case, we get an SCVI/AV of 0.91. And now for that stricter universal agreements method. Looking back at our data, we see there were 10 questions where all 10 experts were in complete agreement about their relevance. So we take those 10 items, divide by the total of 12 items, and that gives us an SCVI/UA of 0.83.
So we've got our numbers, 0.91 and 0.83. But they're just numbers on a screen until we understand what they're telling us. This is the payoff. Let's interpret our results.
So what's the final verdict? Well, an average score of 0.91 is considered excellent, and our stricter universal agreement score of 0.83 is totally satisfactory for a panel of 10 experts. The conclusion is pretty clear. This questionnaire, it passed the test. We've proven, with data, that it has a strong level of content validity.
And that, right there, is the real takeaway. This whole process, from picking experts to calculating scores, it's not just some academic exercise. It's a systematic way to build a strong evidence-based case that your research tool is credible, trustworthy, and actually fit for purpose. It's all about building confidence in the findings you'll eventually get. So, as we wrap this up, I'll just leave you with this one question to think about for your own work. Your findings, your insights, your big conclusions, they're only as strong as the questions you started with. So are yours valid?